playing this and I can't stop because I'm addicted. This I'm done streaming. I'm done streaming for the day. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. All right, I'm done. 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 Is this situation familiar to you? Is the Castorice Global Passive making you crash out? Are you deleting HSR and punching Mimi in the face as we speak? What if you can be convinced that Global Passive is good for Honkai Star Rail? Yep. Before you click off this video or dislike or type Hoyo Shio wahaha wahaha, this guy is sucking down with all that kind of stuff, I promise you it's not clickbait. As long as you watch to the end of this entire video, especially at the end. And if I manage to change your mind at the start about this topic, feel free to consider dropping a like, dropping a subscribe, and otherwise go ahead and report this, right? No clickbait. No clickbait. So with that, let's proceed. If you're watching this video expecting me to start drama, farm them views, mindlessly hating just for the sake of hating, right? Either protecting or talking shit about a company, unfortunately, this is not gonna be the video, right? And I'm pretty sure that a lot of community, right? A lot of the content creators, they would be going through this route regarding the Global Passive in the next few days. I do want to, however, use this video as a platform of actual discussion, not filled with Hoyo Show article, but actually listing out the thoughts regarding this specific circumstance, which I believe we can all agree is a turning point for Honkai Star Rail, because we have never seen anything quite like this. And breaking down essentially the potential impact this has for the community, as well as your concerns, right? My interest for this game is relatively unchanged. Just because I like playing League of Legends doesn't mean I love Riot Games. Just because I like Pokemon stuff, it's very, very cute, doesn't mean I like Game Freak. Same principle basically follows here. And a little bit of a context in case this video made it to your screen for the first time ever, because let's just be real, it is a pretty spicy ass topic. I have been playing Honkai Star Rail for almost every single day since day one, 26th of April 2023. I've been making guides, testing teams, played the stories, done numerous account reviews, went through meta discussions, tier lists, pulled every single 5-star, pulled every single 4-star, built every single unit and team, except for Arlen, Natasha, Misha, and Dunning. Everyone else in my entire account is built. And no, I'm not gonna build it, right? I'm not gonna. What I'm about to say, I may or may not be one of the biggest streamers for Honky Starbucks, at least in the Western side, but I do feel that the things that I say and the impact it does for the community, it does have a pretty decent degree of influence, right? And there will be no sponsor, there will be no hashtag ad. It is completely transparent. There's no gun to my head. That way is not in my house right now. There's no agenda. So with that, let's talk about the Castorice Global Passive. To first understand this topic, we must first basically take a look at what was revealed in the actual live stream, which is essentially what I'm gathering. Your unit has one extra life. Right? I'm specifically talking about this Castorice passive. And I understand that most tourists or drama farmers, they probably don't know too much about HSR meta in the first place, and neither would they even care about HSR meta because we just press one button and just go. But my take on the effect of the Castorice Global Passive itself is that it's not as impactful as you think it is. So editor, pause, insert the crowd, boo, boo, get out, or all this stuff. Just insert all the kind of stuff, right? Insert all the kind of stuff, give it a 5 second, and then we just post it over here. The bottom line is, this passive allows your unit to survive one more turn at death until they get a shield or a heal by the start of their next turn, right? So if an enemy unit hits and kills your unit and you get this revive, you basically still need a heal or a shield when that unit turn begins. Otherwise, it's basically dead. Which means that
almost every single unit HSR, they would still need to run a sustain for the content they are facing right now. And since this is only applied for one unit, right? So even if you get like an AoE wipe, right? You get an AoE wipe, all 4 units die. If it's only applied for that unit's first turn, it means that after that first revive, the rest of the team is more or less cooked, right? For that one instant damage. At least that is what I'm guessing this works, right? We'll see more about it in, I think, 5 days when the creator's early access comes out, but that's gonna be. So it is unlikely that the passive, the global passive, it will affect your sustained runs, aside from this added layer of comfort, which is if you are already bringing sustain to your team and you still die, then that is where this global passive can come in. It's basically like an emergency buy loop, right? It's an emergency buy loop. If you're already running sustain and you die, it gives you this added degree of comfort to your runs. So if you are still having issues sustaining, usually, at least if you have like limited 5-star sustain, it's in the minority, or there are casuals that should basically watch this channel and see what's up, right? The other side is, which is how people struggle with the problems presented in Honkai Star Wars Endgame, is usually not the sustain portion, at least not the main reason, but it's more so to do with the damage output, the HP inflation, the amount of health that these endgame bosses have, right? These are sort of like the biggest complaints, at least that we have been seeing for the past 2 months. So it basically comes down to, can you clear them within the set number of either cycles or the points for the pure vision as well as APOC shadows? So whether your team can output enough DPS for this HP inflation, that is the concern. And having a unit survive one more turn usually doesn't really change or drastically improve your damage output, aside from that one extra life to prevent your instant reset. On the flip side, if you have a sustainless run, right, a 0 cycle run, the triple support 3+1 wheelchair team con, the 3B Babin Sunday, right? If you're doing a sustainless run, for this group of people, objectively speaking, it is pretty small, right? And they don't really have that big of an impact for like 99.99% of the player base in the first place. Aside from that, if you do a 0 cycle, you don't really get anything, right? You get this achievement that you are managed to do this, and I will admit, with this added 1 life, it will be a pretty decent quality of life, especially if you guys watch my streams, especially if we're trying to do the 0 cycles and like our unit gets like 1 shot or whatever. Maybe if we had that 1 more turn, that would have saved us quite a decent chunk of resets. So this added life, it gives the sustainless players, right, a room to output that 1 more hit for that 1 more unit to potentially prevent a curse of 1% or like saving that 1 retry. But at the end of the day, it still doesn't really change your damage output, which most of the time is still the same number 1 priority if you are a sustainless or if you're a sustained player. It is damage output, damage output. You want to clear them as fast as possible. For example, you want to clear to the second wave before the first cycle expires. You want to finish phase 2 before, phase 1 before you can have enough action value. You have to take out phase 2. So at the end of the day, it is still about damage numbers. Some sustainless runs, if you want to talk about, for example, like My Day, right? Or even like Sustain Weld or like Surik, they don't even take that much damage because you either have a lot of interruptions, you have a lot of action value delays, or you just simply break them. So it is not a matter of the sustain itself, but still about the damage output. Which, the bottom line is, Castorice Global Passive, right? Castorice herself. Castorice Global Passive, it changes very little for the majority of players, with not that big of a meta impact, at least for version 3.2. So if you're concerned with this global passive is, oh my god, am I going to be dealing enough damage to the endgame content? The exceptions to this would be, for example, your built-in sustains for a non-sustained unit. These are the only exceptions. So what I'm talking about is basically units that can actually heal themselves without a sustain. At this point, namely, it's your Blade, your Mighty, and even your Firefly, right? These are the units that technically could heal without the use of any sustains, or some kind of external heals from the environment. For example, the current APOC shadow buffs, right, the heal mechanics, or some enemy mechanics in the future, for example, Flame Reaver, right, if you were to attack him and kill one of the clones, you actually get healed a little bit, right? For Flame Reaver also gives you this kind of heal, and even so, if you have these kind of like environments or the unit itself, if your supports or like any of the units actually died, most likely your run will still collapse either ways. Even if the DPS survive for that 1 turn, because we don't really have a single support that could actually benefit from this as of version 3.2. But that being said, the Castorice Global Passive, this investigation on whether this changes everything or whether should we be concerned when it comes up, it brings us to the most important question I want to ask you guys as the players who are watching this video right now. Right, this is the most important question I want to ask. Do you hate the Castorice passive or do you hate the global passive? And I'm pretty sure the answer to this question is quite obvious, right? The way that global passive and how it's implemented in HSR right now, it allows a limited unit, as of this point it's going to be Castorice, to provide this additional buff or this additional mechanic without being in your team. So this could be, as of this current point of time, just the Castorice one-time Bailu revive. Next time, it could be like a crit damage buff. It could be a damage buff. It could be all sorts of different mechanics that could be applied even if you do not use them with your team. So for example, what if there's gonna be like a buff amplifier to all your buffs? What if there's gonna be that give you this free rest down, right? Free defense down, free vulnerability, free weakness, and all these kind of mechanics that is not tied to a passive that could potentially be even more impactful than the one that Castorice is providing. So what then? Are you okay? Are you angry? Are you upset at Castorice passive or global passives? Now, personally, I love this mechanic. Is what I would say if I was a shield, right? Unfortunately, the way that global passives are implemented right now, it is fucking garbage. It is super, 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 super fucking bad. And there's honestly no two ways to go around global passive right now, right? There's no amount of sugarcoating. There's no amount of shilling. There's no amount of beating around the bush. There's no amount of like jumping across this, all that. There is no amount of cover-up that I could think of anyways that can justify the way global passive works in this current game of HSR. Because the implementation of global passive, it fundamentally ruins one of HSR's most important day one aspect that I've been saying since like the beginning of time, aside from leveling your traces. Do you guys want to know a guess of what it is? It's team building. And I have said time and time again, right? In Honkai Star Rail, there's no such thing as like dodge rolls. There's no such thing as iframes, Kara cancel, negative, sword back, or flips, or aerial combat. There's none of those. The only thing you have in Honkai Star Rail, outside of team building in the actual combat itself, is you press 3 buttons. Basic skill out. With knowing when you press it, and sometimes with the right amount of speed, the right amount of relics, or if you just don't give a damn, you press 1 button. And the game just plays by itself. So team building itself as a principle, right? It is so important, it is so pivotal to HSR that one could say if you don't have good team building, if your team building is garbage, right? No amount of in-combat control or god tier relics, or even to a certain extent, islands can fix that, right? If you talk about like islands and light cones, in my opinion, they are just a means to an end to open up, to diversify your team building, right? You either can start running sustainer teams because you have so much more damage, so you can just drop the sustain, or you can see units like aircraft, right? Which instead of running 2 nihility, you run. But most of the mechanics tied to all of the units in HSR right now, it is still back to square one. That is team building. Whether is it dealing higher damage or more synergy, right? So with this global passive and the way that this is implemented right now, it completely changes the way a player like myself or like yourself watching this video right now, it changes the way that you will view team building as an experience, or even how do you plan your pools going forward, especially if you're a free to play or light spender. Because right now, you have this permanent, at this point it's not a stat, but it's basically like a mechanic. It's a permanent mechanic. In the future, it could be a stat increase that doesn't matter, right? It literally does not matter if that unit is your team. So Castorice at this point of time, it is just the start. It is the beginning. But with time, like I mentioned just now, this will set a precedent that if more and more global passive comes out, at what point do a player pull a unit because they want to make a team with that unit? Or do they just pull a unit for the sake of a global passive? And I think this is a very dangerous path, a very dangerous narrative to set on, because what could happen is that your unit's value, right? It is no longer about the unit anymore, right? It is not even about the kit. It is not about the team synergy. It is not even about the items like one. It is not about anything that unit has to offer. It is only about this global passive. We don't even know I'm just gonna say this as like a super great example. We don't even know if Castorice is a tier 0 DPS. Even if Castorice is, which most likely will be the case, right? She's an anniversary unit. They're gonna show the fuck out of her. It is most likely that she's gonna be killed, but we don't know that yet until we see the actual in combat. We don't know that, right? We don't even know if we can compare her with a version 3 DPS like Herta, Clair, Mighty. We don't know that. But because she has this word global passive, people don't give a damn. Her value has gone up tremendously even before she actually hits the field, to the point where a lot of players are saying that she's a must pull. You have to pull this unit or you will break your account, even if you do not necessarily need a DPS. So for example, I think we all play gacha games, especially people that play gacha games for a very long time. We should all know that inherently a anniversary unit's value is very high. But at this point, it is no longer a must pull because it is an anniversary unit, but now it has started to shape into a must pull because of the global passive. So what if this same thing repeats for future limited 5 stars that is not in the anniversary banner? Or what if this same thing happens to a unit that is not even something that you want? What if the unit itself is just absolutely fucking, okay, not garbage, but like a lot more different from the way that you want to play it? Because at the end of the day, not every single player can pull every single unit. It is just impossible. You're gonna lose your 50-50s unless you start to get a second job, right? Pay up, little pop, especially for the free-to-plays and light spenders. So what if you yourself as a player, right? You don't have the team required to make Castorice perform as a tier 0 DPS. Despite, for example, let's just say you're a player, right? Before you pull for Castorice, you are a player that has the perfect team for Firefly, you have the perfect team for Facial, and you have the perfect team for Withered, which is technically right now the top 3 most popular teams. So what if, at that point of time, you already built up these 3 separate teams? Do you really see an inherent need that you absolutely must pull Castorice? Or are you just doing it for the sake of that global passive? So that's one example. What if, for another example, right? What if you're, for example, a Herta main? What if you pulled for a Nexa? And if a Nexa was a ridiculous upgrade for Herta, for example, like Jiao Qiu to Akron, right? If that's the case, what if now, initially you wanted to vertically invest into your Herta, but now you're faced with a choice. You either pull for the Nexa, which is obviously a very clear answer, especially if a Herta main, or you pull for the global passive. What then? Because at the end of the day, especially like I said, for free to plays, you can't have everything. Worse, what if future units? I'm not just talking about Castorice, I'm not talking about the anniversary unit. What if random ass future 5 stars in like 3.6 or like 4.2, 3.7, 5.1, whatever? What if these future units, they also have global passives, but they are a unit that the players straight up do not need? For example, what if there's gonna be a global passive on a sustain when you already have 3 limited 5-star sustains? Are you gonna pull for a 4th limited 5-star sustain just for the global passive? Or what if you have another DPS when you already have a perfect team of like your Herta, of like in this case, let's just say you pull Castorice, so you have Castorice team 2 and Herta team 1. Do you pull for another DPS just for the global passive? Because at the end of the day, chat, not just chat, or anyone that's watching this video right now, Honkai Star Rail is a gacha that is very dependent on what units you own as a player base, right? It is not a game that allows for a lot of skill expression with regards to like your Zenless Zone Zeros or your Warding Waves or even your Genshin Impacts, right? Because you really only have these amount of like set limitations you can do to clear the endgame content. So what you own as a unit in HSR, it is far more important than a lot of the other mainstream gacha games. For lack of better term, meta, right? The quote-unquote meta, it is defined by the units you own and less so by how you control these units, or at least not as important. And if that is gonna be applied to how team building and pulling plans work in HSR, this is gonna be even worse because your opportunity cost in HSR is very high. And if you pull for one unit, most likely you don't get the other unit in the same patch, because I think we all know by now, except for that one Rabba patch, it has been back-to-back 2 limited 5 stars every single patch. So the opportunity cost as a player for a free-to-play or light spender, it is incredibly high. And if you throw in this global passive, the same group of people like free-to-plays and light spenders, they will need even more planning, even more self-control, even more saving up to really determine and lock in, do they even need this global passive? Or should they actually lock in back to the original plan in the environment where there's no such thing as a global passive, right? And I would say that global passive, it is a pretty predatory way of baiting a player's FOMO. I think I'd like to kind of recall back in our discussion for power creep, right? It is basically creating a FOMO in a sense where your endgame environments is tailored to your brand new 5 stars. So it always feels better, feels good that the brand new 5 stars, they are going to be performing better. And players sometimes fail to acknowledge or fail to even realize that, oh shit, my unit's got like power creep because all these new 5 stars, they're doing a lot better. But for global passive, this is not the case, right? This is no longer a matter of like greed or stupidity. It is just straight up the global passive itself. Players would think that, okay, it is quite literally like a upgrade to every single unit. It doesn't matter what team comp I build, it doesn't matter what sort of strategy I want to run. It is just a upgrade permanently for the rest of my life. I don't think that global passives will break the game balance in a sense where if you skip out a global passive, your teams are unplayable. At least that's what I feel for now, from what I've seen from Castorice. But it is more like the FOMO involved in Honkai Styles banners, the amount of missing out compared to a global passive for like your different team comps. It is gonna be a lot harder to resist because if a player already has 2 or 3 maxed out team comps, it's easier for them to skip a unit. But when it comes to a global passive, there's no seeding. There's no cap to a global passive. You just keep getting it and getting it unless they implement a way where only one global passive can be active throughout the entire time. But we don't know for that, right? We don't even know if that's going to be the case, right? So even though global passives, if the passive itself is not that good, but you might have the mentality where, okay, it's a upgrade for everyone in mums, I'm going to pull it, it will become very difficult to decide who do you truly need in HSR. And I kind of want to, this is just me completely being a doomer, right? I'm being a doomer right here. But there's a potential scary path that is far worse than everything that I've been describing for the past 27 minutes, which is what if they balance the game around global passives? Because we know by now, right? Content, they're always getting harder with time. And HSR, they have the offering of the solution with newer units, right? Which is the classic gacha strategy for pretty much all the current gachas, which is every single time a brand new unit comes out, it's gonna be performing very, very good, especially for content we have, which is why new players would always, don't really need to spend that much time to catch up with the old players, right? To incentivize the new players to come into the game, right? The content difficulty so far is not balanced on the global passive. It is balanced on your rate up units, which is the 2 limited banners for this patch and the next patch, such as, for example, we have your mob content for erudition, right? We have your number of hits for a follow-up, or we have like your super rate buffs for pretty much the entirety of version 2 to make these units seem more appealing. But if you don't have these rate up units, you can still play around them. You can maybe not as smoothly, maybe not as easily, but you can still play around them. But what if they base a content's difficulty on a global passive? So for example, let's just use Castorice as an example, right? Castorice as an example. What if all endgame content for the rest of our lives has a free heal at the start of a unit every turn for the rest of our lives? So any team, doesn't matter if it's sustained or no sustained, any team can make use of this global passive. That would be the worst case scenario, because if this was a mechanic introduced for the rest of the lives in HSR and you missed that global passive, you pretty much really want to get it, even if you don't like the unit by itself. It's really bad, and I think by that point, it's I'll see you guys in League of Legends, right? And I really hope that this doesn't ever happen, or at least make it such that this global passive is just a quality of life that's not shaped around endgame content balancing around global passive. I'm not giving them ideas, by the way, but I'm just bringing up a potential red flag that could happen, which is why this is so goddamn bad. But with regards to the impact of a global passive to myself as a player, as a streamer, as a guide maker, I really don't like this, because it is a pretty cheap way of introducing artificial demand for units without increasing the actual demand. So I always like to make this analogy between like demand and supply with regards to who should you pull for, with regards to your account as well as the endgame content, right? Because if you want to increase demand, like real demand, it's either 3-team content or more endgame stages where you can make use of your other units. These are like real permanent demands. But global passive, it is a very cheap way of saying, okay, here is a no-brain, no-nonsense, you pull this unit and it's gonna be there for the rest of your life. And if assuming there's no cap to global passive and you can just keep stacking on for every single unit that has a global passive, it will be very hard to see which units offer good enough value to justify their pools in HSR. Because at the end of the day, it does cost on average, with 50-50, I would say 100 pools to get a 5-star. That is, I think $200 guys. So in a world where choosing which unit to pull is already not that straightforward anymore, Global Passive will just make it even more difficult, especially to myself as someone that, I love to make content that, can help you guys out and unbrick your accounts. It is gonna be far more annoying. Like, sure, for example, right, for myself, I can pull every single unit, right? I pull every single unit, but then what if my content will always have this Global Passive for all of my unit? And that's not something that I myself can remove as a player. So for example, I have like E2 Bubbin, or I have like an E2 Sparkle. If I don't want to use them, I take them out. Right, I've done a lot of these like 4-star showcase, right? No Bubbin, no Rummy Band, and I still can't play. I can still can't enjoy. But if I have a global passive, I'm not gonna do. Especially for players that don't have these global passives, right? And in the same train of thought, if we can have Island Toggle, that would be really, really good, right? But I digress, right? So the joy and enjoyment that I myself as a player I get from HSR, it is from the team building, right? It is from the team building, crafting the speed thresholds, experimenting with different units and how they synergize with one another, and the impact of how this shapes into the endgame. It is from seeing how, with all these builds and the ideas that me, myself, or even my chat sometimes, when to skill, when to ultimate, do we gamble for the 1%? Do we have the 24% auto key? All these are moments that make me like HSR, as well as, the community, I would say, especially for players that like HSR. This is one of the reasons why it's such a great game. I don't really want to think about a global passive because it's just a matter of, okay, if you have no global passive because you didn't put for the unit, go fuck yourself. There's just no depth to it, right? There's no depth, there's no analysis. It's basically like a free, right? It's almost like a free upgrade. It's a free brainless upgrade to make every single team work with essentially no drawbacks, right? There's no opportunity cost, there's no consequence. You just get this unit and you're done. Except it's not free. It's not really free, right? It is only if you have the money or the strategy to pull for these global passive units. Otherwise, you don't have access to this. And for the future global passive itself, I hope that the player base don't develop this mentality of like, okay, I'm just gonna pull this unit for global passive because why the fuck not? It's a free upgrade. And that is a dangerous, dangerous road to go down, right? So I think at this point I have grilled enough about why global passive is absolutely fucking garbage. But remember what I said at the start of this video, where I can convince you that global passive can be a great thing for HSR. In the words of Tectone, with all this yapping and if you want to complain about the game, if you don't provide a solution to the problems that you are complaining, you are just a mindless hater, right? You are just developing hatred and echo chamber, kill these. Oh my god, this game is end of service. I hate this game. It is meaningless. The counterpoint to this is, for example, like Gacha Smack. I think we had this discussion. Gacha Smack feels that, companies don't pay creators enough for them to offer solutions to the problem. Because respectfully, it's not a content creator's job to fix a game. But lucky for you guys, I love the community, my chat, my viewers, and above all, I do like, pretend this is me, guys. I do really, really enjoy HSR. And even if this solution is given for free 99, I will make global passive great again. Ladies and gentlemen, all right, editors, by the way, pause. Insert inspiration music. It is very clear that HSR, as of this version, is starting to hit a wall with regards to team building because a player can only own so many units before saying, nah, I'm good. I don't want to pull for any more new units. Because once you have completed like a full team of 8 or a full team of 12, it gets increasingly more difficult to convince these same players to pull for even more archetypes because they can really clear all the content, right? And since there's no such thing as a 3-team content for the endgame or other endgame content to introduce, more incentives to play all teams, global passives were implemented to create this, like I mentioned, artificial difficulty, artificial demand to pull for more of these units. And we already know how absolutely fucking bad this is. My solution: make global passives locked behind the progress of actually playing the game instead of premium currency. You don't lock global passives behind a unit, you lock global passives behind finishing the story. finishing the events, finishing the goddamn Divergent universe. When you hit goddamn Challenger, you unlock a fucking global passive. Yep. So this solution, in my opinion, is the best of everything. Datas. I have given this a lot of thought. I have been thinking about this for I think the past 2 weeks. Even when I was in Japan, I was thinking, how the hell do I fix global passive? And now that we can finally talk about it, this is my solution. Feel free to let me down know in the comments what other solutions you guys have, but let me just expand on this a little bit, right? So why I say this is the best way to introduce, if you guys want to introduce global passive, this is the best way to go about it, right? Because new players, you will all unlock the passive eventually, no matter what, as long as you play the game. And HSR, as a game itself, it has this excellent system where it retains every single event, unlike Genshin Impact. You can play every single event from day 1 of 26th of April 2023 all the way to this day. You have all these events saved up with all these strategies. So what if you just introduce not even like insane global passive, maybe like just a team-wide 1 speed boost, team-wide 1% attack, team-wide 1% defense after finishing all these events. And this also makes sense lore-wise because you're a player that progressively grows and interacts within the units of the Honkai Star universe, right? And after a specific milestone, so for example, you finished up Enkanomiya, you finished up Belobog, you finished up Shinzo Lofu, you finished up the entirety of Amphorius, for example, having a global passive, it makes sense and it provides this attachment to the player. It's almost as if that you can appreciate, for example, let's just say Castorice, right? If we use Castorice as an example, how cool it would be if by the end of the Amphorius storyline, you unlock Castorice global passive. Because not all players will pull for Castorice, but every single player that played the game, you would have finished the story. This is regardless if you pull or did not pull for unit. So now that you give this global passive after finishing this story, it can actually make you feel that Castorice did in fact make an impact, a Genshin impact, no I'm just kidding, make an impact to your journey as it leads you starward. Not everybody will pull for everyone, but because as long as you play the story and events, global passives, it will be a very, very good way of conveying how impactful these different units would have to your entire team. It's almost as if they join you on the Astral Express, except you don't really pull for them. And this also sets I would say this is almost an unprecedented status for like all of the mainstream gacha right now, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, where you can actually get rewarded for more than just premium currencies, more than just pools or like the fucking 4-star ratings that nobody gives a fuck about, but instead a tangible, permanent upgrade by playing the story and experiencing the world and the lore built up by Honkai Starbucks. Just like how people that enjoy lore wanted it to happen, right? There will be no FOMO, there will be no opportunity cost, right? Which 5-star should I push, 5-star should I get? There is none of that, and there will be no complaints if a player base doesn't have this global passive because it's available for all, right? In my argument of, for example, greed and stupidity, right? You quite literally just have to play the game and unlock these kind of global passives. Level up your units, upgrading your traces, and you play the story to get global passives. If a player doesn't play the game and they want to complain about endgame content, it is really just like a warm situation, right? It is what it is, because I'm sure that there are also the same people that don't level up their traces or don't level up their light cones and they're still level 60 and they will still complain about endgame content when it is essentially free upgrades. It is quite literally free upgrades to make your team stronger. So this same process, it can also be applied to players playing through the story and unlocking this global passive, right? And at the end of the day, if you're gonna be a player that don't care about meta and you log into HSR like once a patch and you have like 2,400 reserve stamina, right? The end game relevancy is not really that relevant to you, right? You are casual that logs in once a month. It doesn't really matter. So whether or not you get this global passive, if you're somebody that logs in once a patch, respectfully, it's just not important. Whereas for players that actually play through the game and play the story and play the events, you do unlock this global passive that makes you feel even more attached to the units, especially after completing these separate story milestones, right? So my bottom line, this solution is very, very simple, right? Global passives, you make it available for every single player in the game, at least if they complete the events or the story or whatever it is, right? And at this point of time, the players will still pull for strong units. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, like whether or not Castorice gets this global passive, I'm pretty sure a huge population of the player base would have pulled for Castorice anyways. This global passive is just a even higher artificial demand for a anniversary unit with free top-up refresh, which honestly I feel like it doesn't really serve that big of an impact, and those people that want to pull would have pulled regardless. On top of this, you can get even more involved with the story and the lore because you actually want to finish it to unlock the global passive, which I would say is one of the most important aspects for a casual player base, right? I think a casual player base, they probably don't care about meta, they probably don't even care about what global passive does, but they just want to get involved in the lore and the story, which could potentially translate into more story retention, right? You have more, girlfriend experience, parasocialism with your anime waifu, which means that these players are the exact same players who just go all in for their waifu, right? People with E6 Firefly, E6 Boot Hill, E6 Adventuring because they are their waifu husbando. And this way of introducing global passive tied to story, it gives you even more reason to stay locked in and finish up this story for an otherwise untapped market, which always, I'm not gonna do the story. I'm not gonna do the event because I don't give a damn, right? Because it's too goddamn long, right? There's no skip button. Now you have this added reason of introducing these players to understand what's going on in the Honkai Star-Rail lore universe, right? It is a win-win, in my opinion, for pretty much everyone. Peace has been obtained. Happiness, love, hail Pokke for saving HSR as well as the global passive. Also, in case you guys can't tell, my voice is absolutely fucking cool, guys, right? To repeat my intro as I end off this video. Okay, editor, play that Tyler 1 intro.
Fix the game! It sucks playing this shit! And I can't stop! Because I'm fucking addicted! This shit! I'm done streaming! I'm done streaming for the day! I'm done! Alright, I'm done.
At this point of the video, alright, in all seriousness, right, after the whole, the Tyler 1, all that kind of stuff, it's not really me trying to virtue signal if I'm like better than someone for supporting or hating global passives, or like I want to start a movement or agenda against the game that I love, because I do love HSR, right? At the end of the day, I love the actual gameplay itself, and I would still pull for Castorice with this global passive, even if the changes doesn't get implemented, which I think is a fucking fantastic solution, right? A fantastic change, right? I will still pull for Castorice because I do so for every single unit HSR because I enjoy playing with her, I enjoy testing her out, and it is, it is at the end of the day my passion to play HSR. So I'm not gonna sit around here and if you guys want to judge me for, oh my god, how dare he support this game? How dare he support this company? He's a hypocrite, like kill this guy out. So be it. It's kind of like that meme, like this guy is shouting at a group of people, oh my god, this thing fucking sucks, why the fuck are you playing? And then the other group is like, and they go back. Something like this, right? So although I've given this solution, at the end of the day, I'm just one guy. I'm just one streamer. I'm just one random guy from Singapore that, probably has very, very little impact to the entirety of the world of HSR. So maybe if you guys watch this video to this point and you agree with the things that I've said, and you actually didn't get, rage baited and you click off this video, I sincerely thank you, right? And hopefully this could create a bigger audience, more waves, and people can talk about it a little bit more because it could make an impact, a Genshin impact in the future of Honkai Star-Rail, right? I'm not saying that you should or should not quit HSR because of global passive. And frankly speaking, you shouldn't really be looking to me as a direction, as a guidance on whether or not should you play any game. Because this video as a whole, it's basically me breaking down on what Castorice Global Passive entails, on whether or not do you actually hate Castorice or do you hate Global Passive, and as well as how this can be, potentially resolved by offering a solution towards the end, right? The bottom line is, it's really just not that deep, and if the game itself, if Honkai Star-Rail is a game that's just not enjoyable for you as a player, there's always a lot more fun things to do in life. Especially after, the whole Japan trip with the perspective. There's so many things to do, and it is your life, it is your time, and it is your choice. And don't let any random stranger, random streamer on the internet, or even like your friends, tell you or decide for you what you should or should not do, what you should or should not love, and what you should or should not hate. I will still be here. I will still be making Honkai Star content because at the end of the day, I still like playing. I have a passion for making this kind of content. And if you still like my content, I'll continue making it for you guys. And you guys, a very, very happy piece of happiness family, right? If you do, however, choose to move on to a different game, perhaps our paths will cross once again if, the worst of the worst happens and I become, I don't know, a Pokemon streamer or like a League of Legends streamer, right? Maybe I'll see you guys around if our paths were to diverge, right? So at the end of everything, I love my community and I love my chat, and I'll be looking forward to see what this future holds for the impact of Global Passive for the remainder of HSR's career or the HSR lifespan, right? And if you have managed to watch until this second of the video, this is going to be the word of the day. And it is extremely, extremely important that you type out the word of the day in the comment section so that people will think that you're actually schizo, right? The word of the day, or rather the phrase of the day, I love Global Passive, hail Pokke. This is the word of the day, right? If you have watched to the end of this video, type this out. Because I want people that don't watch the video, I want people that, gets filtered by what's going on. I want them to think that I'm absolutely fucking schizoing out and we're all horror shows together. And me personally, I do want to filter out these people from my community in the first place. So it would be doing me a service if you guys can comment these in the comment section as you've come to the end of today's content. With that, life is short. All the best. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.